Alright, is everything good? Alrighty. Aloha, everybody, and back to the Bob Ross article from Daily Beast. Let me scroll down. I was perusing on where should I probably leave off and back to. So, I've been talking. Last time we talked about was when nowadays the Kowalski's family's daughter is now part of Bob Ross Inc. and the pursuit of Twitch notoriety by Bob Ross Entertainment is anew. So, we can find what is up with that. So, where should I just read off? Yep. And go through here. Okay. Should I actually talk about... No, I went to the Bob Ross mural. Should go to the documents. No, I'm already far away. Yeah, just go where they start talking about more documents and details about the lawsuit, especially once it starts becoming a playoff issue. Okay. Here is what I mean. Ooh. Based on court documents turned over as part of Steve's lawsuit in 2012, the day when the world was supposed to end and maybe we are dead and we live in a simulation, who knows? When Joan took over, Bob Ross Inc. brought in less than $200 in licensing revenue outside of its paint products. In 2015, the number was still only about $40,000, but in the following year it rocketed to $460,000, and the year after that, 2017, Bob Ross brand products were kicking off well north of $1 million in licensing fees to Bob Ross Inc. An almost pure profit. It's a safe bet that number has only climbed in the ensuing years, especially now with the national corporate campaigns like the Mountain Dew commercial. There was only one small issue, as had always been the case. It wasn't entirely clear if Bob Ross Inc. owned what they were selling, since Kowalski's lawsuit against the settlements with Bob's estate left some of Bob's intellectual property, especially the right to use his name and likeness for commercial products, in a potential legal gray zone. If there was in fact the case, the only way to unmask it would be in a court of law, and it would take motivated litigants to go head to head with Bob Ross Inc. In the event that led to Steve Ross's face-off with Joan and Bob Ross Inc. started with the third family that had made Bob Ross all that he was. The Cups, whose patriarchate Dennis has played a critical role in marketing Bob Ross's paints for more than 3 decades. Several years ago, Joan decided to leave Dennis's company. We all saw things in the organization that concerned us, she was explained. She clearly biting her tongue in order to not just sling mud. It was a shrewd and necessary business decision. It also immediately blew a hole in Dennis's balance sheet so big the company was suddenly at moral risk. It fell to Dennis' son Lawrence, a garrulous businessman, to try to save the family enterprise. Lawrence's idea was to engage a new front man for a new line of paints, someone who would have instant name recognition. If not at Bob's level, then at least close enough to keep the company afloat. And the person who immediately came to mind was none other than Bob's son, Steve. Lawrence reached out to see if Steve might be interested, but Steve immediately flagged a problem, the possibility of a lawsuit by Bob Ross Inc. Yeah, for decades, Steve had heard the company's footsteps behind him. His abiding worry was getting sued over his own charming. As Steve recalled to the Daily Beast, he always remembered a phone call he had received back in 1995. Annetta called 2 days after my dad died, and she said, "I want you to listen to me carefully. Any Bob Ross art products, anything related to art or painting, you can never ever make those, distribute those, create a business around those, nothing. But if you would like, you can do anything not painting or art related that you want. You can do Bob Ross pickles, Bob Ross shoes, Bob Ross whatever, but you cannot put the Ross name on a painting or art related product, period, ever, for the rest of your life." End quote. What other voice I should speak? Oh yeah, the sergeant voice. "Yeah. Sir, none of this have ever really come up through since prior to Jones taking over. Bob Ross Inc. had never expanded beyond the core paint products. Walt and Annetta knew that would happen if they did do it." End quote. Steve said Joan was stupid enough to do it. And that what triggered me. That triggered me to pursue a lawsuit. Okay, now I'm losing the accent. Sure. Steve have another trigger too. For the first time, he learned about the final amendment to. Okay, now it just sounds like I'm sounding like a tuba man. For the first time, he learned about the final amendment to his father's will, the one that theoretically turned over intellectual property to him. He suddenly realized he had a strong legal claim to his father's legacy. Steve and Lawrence joined forces with one of Bob's best friends down at Janster and formed a LLC. They restrained an intellectual property lawyer to press their case for the ownership rights to Bob's name and likeness. Likeness. By the way, what's more comfortable for me, actually, it's not my voice without actually damaging the throat. Case for ownership rights to Bob's name and likeness, as well as damages for alleged infringement as a result of Bob Ross's Inc.'s foray to the broader licensing business. The trio even went ahead and filed a trademark to use a sketch of Bob's face on rolling papers and other weed and tobacco-related products. Really? Weed and tobacco-related products. Weed and tobacco. You have the products from Bob Ross's, with Bob Ross face. Joan was somewhat shell-shocked when their lawyer reached out. "We haven't heard from Steve for 25 or so years," she said, and the lawyer's letter arrived. "We didn't have an opportunity to have any sort of conversation, but we would have liked that," she added. Oh, oh man, now my voice is crumbling. Alright, let's go with flamboyant noise because I feel like it's most appropriate to transition to that. Rebuffed by their request to discuss a settlement in the summer of 2018, Steve and his partners filed a federal lawsuit and headed to court. In many respects, the case was a blast from the past. Blast from the past, a redux of the earlier 1995 lawsuits against Bob's estate about work for hire, oral contracts, trademarks, and copyrights. After a year of claims and counterclaims, and depositions about orderless thinner brush feeder, racks, bungee cord, easels, and other items once one imagines made their first ever appearances in federal court, the lawyers have finally made their cases. That fall, almost a quarter century after Bob's death, a judge in Virginia set to task of determining whether the world's most famous TV artist should reside in perpetuity. Perpetuity. Alright, might as well drink some water. Oh. 6 months later, we remember his decision. In his view, Bob had in fact given all of his intellectual property to Bob Ross Inc. during his lifetime via oral contract that have been confirmed by written contracts. If the written contracts have existed, no matter apparently that the written contracts did not exist, thus the final amendment to that will was irrelevant, since the intellectual property in the question was, by the time, not Bob's to give to anyone else. In other words, Bob Ross Inc. owned it all. Steve and his partners thought they had a strong case on appeal, but they didn't have the cash to continue the fight, nor did they want to be tied up in legal limbo for the foreseeable future. From the onset, what they have really wanted was the right to use Steve's name and the assurance that they wouldn't be hit with a well-financed lawsuit from Bob Ross Inc. if they did. In the end, they struck the best deal possible under the circumstances. In exchange for a modest payment. Steve gave up his claims on Bob's intellectual property. Most importantly for him, perhaps Bob Ross Inc. gave him the clearance to move forward with his business using his name and the right under non-disclosure agreements to show some terms in the settlement to prospective business partners who might be fearful of a Bob Ross Inc. lawsuit if they were to get into bed with Steve. To get into bed with Steve. Bed with Steve. Okay. All in all, it was a bitter pill for Steve and his partners, bearing a miracle. Kowalski's family company will own Bob Ross's name and likeness and financially benefit from his good name for as long as there's money to be made off of it. Of course, the mouse is freaking delayed and then I lost my position. Damn it. Of course, it's also possible to escape the cold, hard reality that the Kowalskis folded shopping back in 1995 after Bob passed. It's highly likely that Bob would have faded into obscurity such as Bill Alexander has. There simply wasn't anyone else in Bob's orbit with the right skill set or business acumen to navigate the intervening decades, whether that was Walt and Annetta's keeping Bob on the air in the US of A, while expanding internationally, or Jones' bold venture into the realm of brand licensing to create a new roadship for the internet age. I know that I'm not doing exactly what was intended by Jane, Bob, Walter, and Annetta. Joan told the Daily Beast. Steve may have lost one aspect of his father's legacy for good with the stroke of the judge's pen, but he did not gain something as well. No, but he did gain something as well. Something for which there is no monetary value. Something has been missing for his entire life ever since his dad has passed away into the great unknown. Or unknown right there. That something began a little before 9 a.m. on Wednesday, September 24, 2019, an hour due east of the tiny makeshift TV studio where Bob Ross had launched his career all those years ago, nestled between the endless cornfields and a few towering windmills that slowly spinning in the breeze. the 4-H Fairground in Winchester, Indiana, is little more than a squat, faded white building with a sun-baked gravel parking lot. Despite the inglorious setting, in that day, at this hour, the 4-H is about to become the temporary center of the Bob Ross universe. It sounds like the freaking Avengers symbols type of stuff going on. All right, Steve. Oh yeah, no, there's a transatlantic accent. I forgot. Yeah. Several dozen artists have converged here for a painting workshop unlike any other in recent memory. For the first time in at least 15 years, is an opportunity to learn that Bob's two most trusted master painters, Steve and Dana, Bob's son and his best friend at the point in history aside from Annetta, they point more time than anyone else in direct contact with the man for whom they are the most devoted disciples. Yeah. For those gathered, it was a workshop with two living legends. A 9 sharp with little fanfare, Dana takes the dais at the front of the 4-H's canvas single room, gives a brief introduction and demonstrates the first step of today's painting, Sunlight in the Shadows. The same crucian-hued forest scene he painted when he guest hosted an episode of The Joy of Painting back in 1993. He even uses one of Bob's old usuals, and later he'll show off memorable like the Bob Ross vanity plate that graced Bob's Corvette. Dana is certainly a draw. Oh, okay, now I see the difference. I was actually performing the other accent because I should touch my cheeks together. Oh well. Yeah, I just need some rest. Alright, here goes the fun boy noise. Dana. Oh, Dana. Dana is certainly a draw for most. For most, Steve is the star of the show, and on Thursday, when it's Steve's turn to teach, he is as he will be throughout the 4 days of painting and socializing over pizza and beer. Talkative, funny, empathetic, and with such brimming artistic talent that it's almost like he's performing a magic show whenever he puts his brush on the canvas. In fact, Bob's closest friends all say Steve is a better painter than his father. Steve is such a natural in front of the crowd that it's almost impossible to believe that he is the first time he's taught in a decade and a half, or how long and hard his journey has been to reach this point. Back in 1995, in his final words to him, Bob encouraged Steve to always continue a simple but prominent acknowledgement that he knew how much Steve might struggle in his absence. And indeed, Bob's death had dragged Steve into a dark depression from which he almost didn't escape. At one point, shortly after Bob passed, Steve was driving on a highway when suddenly an impulse washed over him to swing his car into an oncoming traffic to end the pain once and for all. He gripped the wheel tight and managed to keep it together, but just barely. The depression also affected his livelihood. He has been painting since he was a child, but after his father's death, that which had given him so much joy and self-worth become inextricable tied to the worst moment in his life. He did not paint and teach some over the ensuing years to make ends meet, but he eventually dropped off the circuit entirely and settled in the hermit lifestyle that would define his existence for the next 15 years. Alrighty. Now here's gravel voice. That is into the legal confirmation. Confirmation. That is into the legal confirmation with Bob Ross Inc. rekindled his fire and brought him to Winchester for the workshop with Diana. All in all, the seminar was such a smashing success. 4 days of painting 6 to 8 hours a day. Bob Ross Bond Woods Galera. What? Bob Ross's Bon Mode Scleror, Galore, Bon Mods Galore. Alright, whatever. Bon Mods Galore and a group of like-minded devotees bonded over their shared love of painting. Steve and Diana regaled with them with never-ending stories about Bob. Oh, yeah, the gravelly voice is now struggling with throat. When Steve returned home to Florida, he hoped alone online to see if any of the attendants have said anything about the event. He wasn't expecting much, but what he found was a showstopper. There was words of love and words of kindness, the same sort he had doled out to the painters, but directed at him. I didn't realize that people missed me or wanted to make. wanted to. Hey, didn't realize that people missed me or wanted to have me to do this again. He said I always do. Yeah, now I'm just speaking the character. Oh, but what I needed is, maybe I didn't want to know, but maybe I reserved the right to remain ignorant. End quote. On and on, Steve read about all the people who had come to learn from him, about how he had touched their lives in profound, meaningful ways, just as his father had, and the words of kindness flashed across the screen. As he took stock of it all, suddenly a deep emotion welled up inside and barreled toward him like a freight train. Alright. And then it hit him. Steve took a deep breath that he began crying. Tears streamed down his face as he felt the long absent grace of God and the simplest of emotions, the one that had been absent in his life for so long that he had forgotten that it even was joy. Like the first time I've had the sun on my face in 1,000 years. Austin Ramsey is a writer and producer in Los Angeles. If you have any information related to the article, please email me. Email him as bobrossestips@gmail.com. And there you go. Oh boy, the struggles between three people: Bob Ross, the Kowalski couple, and Bill Alexander, couple with everybody else. Like, then later, Kowalski's daughter and that Bob's Ross son dealing with stuff. You know, ending here with Steve pretty much talking about a bit about his life and now talking about him finding some satisfaction to what he wanted. Yeah, that's a good ending, especially knowing where he was in full. I did wish there was more pictures, especially when it comes to shared documents, but yeah. That, and also, you know, it was a bit of trouble trying to figure out where exactly they had left off, because I don't have any point to remember. This is a long part 2 that it seems like it should have been split to a part 3, since they talk about two things, where one, it's the lawsuit and legacy, and then 2, the aftermath of pretty much Boss and the Kowalskis' time being transferred to the daughter and the sons, reasoning with each other and things they have looked ahead, especially since, you know, later on you have pretty much a huge time gap that's going through. Yeah, but, you know, at least I know what's in the up and the up, and I am curious of what comes after this, because the ending does show that Steve is, you know, now in part of the public eye and is showing his work to many people, and he will continue with it with Twitch along with the new leadership in Bob Ross Inc. And seeing how the state acts with Steve Ross's actions, that is something to perceive in the future. But this does showcase a lot of things that were in the dark and not part of the public. yeah, shows the case is that. I will be talking while I search on other things related to Bob Ross. Probably pictures, such, other screens, so I could verify if they're actually saved the show. I know I showed him how he looked, all that jazz. But yeah, hey, this is actually a good time to actually just check the paintings and stuff, and his other stuff. Oh god. Maybe also what you look at is also other things related to the ink business side into it. But yeah, let me actually just show it. I put the Bob Ross images, but it just shows a bunch of his iconic pictures. There's this one where it actually does show one of his beauties, and there's also this one where, like, believe it or not, I actually sort of draw this in graphic design before, and it was actually somewhat wonderful. But yeah, that is the most iconic background picture for Bob Ross creation. And it's wonderful. Yeah, we already saw this one where he actually draws about landscapes. And I can't verify this one. Yeah. I also like the him with him having a raccoon, but I like to say such. Yeah, it's a thing that exists. But yeah, I wonder what's the behind meaning of it. Maybe it's just him spending his days with pictures, in the wild, taking pictures in the wild and such. But this is going more to his private life, which that is still under some secrecy because of privacy. So time will certainly tell, after this article, that more information is going to come around. Because here's a good example. It took me a while. Well, not didn't take me a while, but it didn't take me quick to search up was pictures of Bob Ross, the son, that I just had to type it in just like this as a question instead of the actual Steve Ross and other stuff. There's just not much pictures what they do because that shows how he's not much in the public eye. But yeah, this is him in the old programs, and seeing how he's grown to facial hair, not facial hair to facial hair. And oh boy, he starts wearing glasses and starts to becoming yeah, there's him with glasses. So he wore the glasses till he got facial hair, and then onward. Yeah, and this is duo and such. Yeah, what happened to Steve Ross? Steve Ross, the son of Bob Ross. Yeah. What the thing that I just can't believe is just his gold ball chain. Yeah, it's just something actually. Also, look, this is the family. They sure look God. Just looks like Bob really loves him buttoning his shirt and showing some of his chest here. It's masculine, but he also likes his collared shirts. Way different than his James Dean look. And yeah, it does go to show that you try to mimic his work and stuff. Alright, I'm gonna scroll up because I'm starting to see some strange images that's not related to him. But yeah, that is a part of, its legacy, still continue. Besides that, that's pretty much the end of the article, and I see what's up now. Glad I finished it. I'm happy. Who? Aloha.